grantors and outlook in the community of having more than one, having a goal for, like, say, a child, and several different agencies providing services for that. And even some of them are requiring that now, that you partner to get their grants. And it was about how to get partnership with another group, things to consider when you're thinking about going in together on this type of project.
Was that videotaped as well?
No, we were trying, but we had some technical difficulties.
Right.
I was the technical difficulty.
So we're
Well,
trying
mission's the
again.
first step.
Hi, Jennifer. Have a seat if you want for a minute. And we're just going to do some introductions, that sort of thing. And one of the things that I took away with that, but I'm biased, is that you need to know the other nonprofits. And what she was mentioning is if you get to know them and have a relationship already, you know whether you can trust those people, whether they're going to follow through on their part of the collaboration. And so that's what this is for, is hopefully to make those connections. So that down the road, if you decide to partner, or at least you know about some of the other organizations. So basically, I think I mentioned to most of you, there's a business card binder out there. Put your business cards in and bring in material. I'll keep it locked away in between meetings, and if you're not here, I'll go ahead and put it out for you. We have a resource guide that some of our people use. Feel free to use your camera phone and take pictures of any pages that you're interested in. Basically, I had a couple posters made up. Training often gives people solutions to problems already solved, but collaborating addresses challenges no one has overcome before. And hopefully this group will tackle some of that new stuff. We're trying to get more advanced and futuristic. We're going to try and record it this month. Hopefully it'll be more successful. Maybe put it on YouTube, and also maybe have some remote where they can dial in and actually see the presentation. We've got some people in West Phoenix who would like to do that rather than drive down. So we're looking toward the future and towards solving some of those problems, be they media or whatever, to bring more services to you. We're thinking of maybe in the future doing a panel where you can ask questions of some experts, a panel type thing. And I've also gotten permission from our CEO. We have a media, like newspaper, like releases, getting information out into the community. We have a specialist in that, and she has said that we can use her for a presentation, so that'll be coming up. So any ideas that you might have, we'll develop and expand upon. Let's see. One other thing. We are having on May 8th, we're having one for boards and board members and CEOs. Mr. Patrick McWhorter, who is president and CEO of the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits.
Oh, is he still going to be there?
Yes.
He's resigned.
Yes, but I have talked with him.
Okay.
He said he's keeping up with his speaking arrangements through June. So he will be able to give his presentation here. I'm going to have a special flyer about that presentation. Come on in. And I'll be sending it out attached to, like I said, I'm sending an email that'll recap this presentation, and also I'll send that out. Any CEOs or board members, and then you folks are also welcome to come. And it's an opportunity that probably won't come again for a long time because he's had so much experience in it. And as Jennifer said, he is moving on. Next month's topic is, again, like I say, around audits. June 30th is nonprofits. A lot of them, it's their year end. So it's preparing for your audit best practices. And that is on your list of upcoming events. Then after that, Mr. McWhorter will be in May. and I forget what we have in June, but it's on your sheets. Then in the fall, we'll be doing other things other than auditing type of things. So I want to do a little introduction around the table. And the team builder is if you could live anywhere and take everything with you, where would you live and why? And a few short things about your organization and then a short answer to that. Would you like to start, Tuesday?
We're like, oh.
No.
You want to stay in the valley, right?
Absolutely. So where I'd want to live and why?
Yeah, if you could take everything with you that you wear in the world, would you?
I really fell in love with London. I'd really like to live in London and pretty much any place where you can actually use public transit and it's successful. So, yeah, but absolutely London. Of the places I've actually seen and been to, London.
Kathy?
I would go back to my hometown. So I grew up in central Pennsylvania in the Appalachian Mountains around the Amish. And the only reason why I'm not living back there now is because we do marketing and social media and we have to be out in a city kind of area. So that's where I go.
Nikki?
Yeah.
What city?
It's right by State College. I grew up in a town called Lewistown.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm from that area.
Okay.
Lancaster.
I'm York, so.
Oh, yeah. I always went to the art school.
And your company?
Oh, yeah, your
Oh,
company.
sorry.
Go ahead.
We're with Cultural Sponge. We do graphic design, websites, marketing. Most of our clients are nonprofits, so we kind of niche that area, and that's why we're here today too.
Okay, Nikki, go.
I'm with ICANN, and I'm trying to think of where, I guess maybe a big city, somewhere near a beach, I don't know. Just never thought about that.
Aaron, are you going to participate?
Sure. Aaron Harris, Chief Operating Officer here at ICANN. And I would stay here. I transplanted here from somewhere else, so this is where I want to be.
Okay, Lee?
Lee Cooley, marketing and communications. I don't think would definitely allow me to pass you out the card. I came here in '06, went to work at Make-A-Wish of America, the national office, and marketing and production manager there. And sort of started a little umbrella sidebar business called Scottsdale Non-Profiteers, and did work with a lot of different companies, Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona, Phoenix Union Foundation for Education, just quickly. And then after 3.5 years with Valley Youth Theater's marketing and communications director, decided that they would make a great client. So I converted my employer to a client and opened Gap Marketing. And I hail from West Florida, so if I had to choose and could take everything and everyone with me, I'd probably go back to West Florida, where I grew up in Lynn Haven, which is just outside of Panama City. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Valerie Valencia. My company is Stellar Research, and we help nonprofits prove the good that they're doing.
That's perfect.
And it's a new methodology that we've developed by taking principles of physics. I'm actually a laser physicist and applying it to the field of marketing. And I would probably go to Hawaii because of the beauty. I just love beauty. I grew up in the desert, so I love the desert, but the green is like eye candy to me, that beautiful luscious green, like in the Appalachians. And because of the weather too, the weather and the beauty.
Hey, I'm Jennifer Cruz.
Jennifer, I'm sorry.
I'm with Desert Sounds, and what Desert Sounds says is we work with youth and we provide them access to music education and instruments and classes, and we give them performance skills. We have a large mariachi program with over 50 kids in it, so it's a large youth mariachi program. And and if I could live anywhere, I would say at first Norway, because since I did a report in 6th grade on Norway, I've always wanted to go see the land of the where the midnight sun and all the fjords. But since I never visited there, I don't know about, once you get there, it might not be quite what what the embassy said and everything. So, but I would at least give it a good shot.
Sorry about your name, Jennifer.
That's
Now
okay.
Hillary.
Yeah, it's okay. So I'm Hillary, and I'm an artist and a graphic designer, and what I do is create logos, flyers, websites, those kinds of things. But my business is really based on how I see the world, and in hopes that maybe I could rub off a little bit on people to show them how amazing our earth and plants and trees, and Valerie, you and I go on through on that point, really are. But we're all a work of art, of a grand artist, and I love showing people how I see things to inspire and make their lives better. And if I could go anywhere, it would be Prescott, and I would have a little farm next to a river, and I'd lay in the grass. So, yeah.
Kenya.
I would go to Kauai because it's slower paced, the weather is beautiful, there's no snow, there's no 115 degrees. That's where I go. And there's water, of course.
And Jennifer is our speaker for today.
Hi, everyone. I currently work with Wallace Plush and Dreyer. I do a lot of nonprofit auditing, some 990 tax returns and things like that. So I will be presenting today. And if I could go anywhere, I think my favorite place so far that I visited would probably be the Tuscany region of Italy. So thinking if I had to choose today, that's where it would be.
Okay, that leads us right in. If Jennifer, if you want to just,
Okay, yes.
Are you ready, or do you want to finish eating your?
With stated exempt purposes. So if any of those are kind of confusing, we're going to go over them because the jargon is sometimes a little bit confusing. How many people got one? Well, that's good. 2, 3, 4.
I stopped at
Maybe
4.
different phrasing.
All right, okay, good,
I only
good. So some
remember
people
4.
know a little bit about it. So the first one is private benefit or inurement. The second word, inurement, is kind of even hard to say, and you kind of think, what is that? So we'll start with private benefits. Private benefit is just mainly anything directed exclusively towards some exempt purpose. Its activity should not serve the private interest or private benefit of anybody in your organization. So, in essence, everything that you guys are doing should be for the purpose of the organization. Nobody should be benefiting from any of these activities outside of what their normal course of business is.
Other than a salary.
Well, salary can sometimes be private benefit. If for example, normal CEOs get paid $100,000 and your CEO is getting paid $200,000, that could be private benefit. So that's one thing that you do have to kind of consider
So salaries need to be in line
with other organizations, yes.
Fair market value.
Inurement it's technically the same thing, which is kind of why they're put in the same line. The concept really is somebody's benefiting a private shareholder or individual because the person's relationship, they're able to influence the organization. What does that really mean? It just means that people in your organization shouldn't be getting anything other than what normal course of business should be. And that's stated kind of what your mission is. For example, what's ICANN's mission?
Here it is.
Right there. So if somebody was, let's see, so you're empowering youth. If you had an individual that came in and they had an after-school program and they were soliciting people for the benefit of themselves, trying to get students here to go to their after-school program that really had nothing to do with this mission, and you know, they're starting to get some of that. That's kind of private benefit. You really shouldn't be doing any kind of soliciting like that to, you know, yeah.
So let's say I'm a shareholder in a youth driver's ed course.
Okay.
And our organization is looking at, putting youth into some kind of program like that. me suggesting, oh, this is a great group to use.
That's not private
Okay.
benefit, no.
That's more,
It would have to be somebody who's
Suggestion.
actually working here and at your organization and getting some sort of, if they're getting the money for it,
got it.
something
Okay.
like that would be more private
Totally
benefit
get it.
environment. Just suggesting another program is totally fine.
Okay.
Even if you'll personally benefit from them using that program.
That might be private environment, it's a little
You
bit black
have
and
to look
white.
at that, you have to also then get somebody else, get like 3 or 4 other companies that do the same thing. The board has to look at that,
Right.
and then you have to say, at least according to our bylaws, due to conflict of interest, I am out of this conversation, and have that recorded and let everybody else decide and
Exactly.
keep your mouth
But if
shut.
they decide to use yours,
Then that's fine, but
Then
you
it's
have
fine.
to keep your mouth
Yeah,
shut.
I mean, approval,
Zip.
if the board's reviewing it, and there are additional contractors or what, not for that purpose, and the board approves it, that's fine. But somebody just going out and soliciting things for their own company or benefit is.
If they're an
is not
employee.
allowed.
If they're an employee, and then signing the contract, like, I could not go and, if my husband had a business, and go solicit his company to do something without, that would be like a big,
Big no-no.
no, no.
So let me ask you a question in this scenario. If somebody owns a private business and starts a nonprofit with the intention to have the two interact in some way, if the nonprofit and somehow is directing or creating funds for the private, that would be this, right?
Yeah, it could be. I actually.
That's done a lot.
Yeah, it depends. Normally, for example, I actually have a company that they have a nonprofit, and the owner, she's a board member, but she is an owner of another company that interacts with that company. And recently, they paid for some products from the LLC, and we actually said, you know what, it's probably better not to do that because it looks like a private benefit. So they actually refunded the money and didn't do it. So it just depends what happens. For example, the LLC, they buy music for the other company, and so that's totally fine because it's to benefit but if there's a lot of transactions going to the private company, that probably is not gonna be a good thing, so.
This is just a quick sidebar example, but what about someone that would use their credit card, their personal credit card, and get points for it?
We would say that you shouldn't be using personal for anything related to a nonprofit business, that there should be a corporate credit card. Because you're benefiting from those personal points, and technically that should be going to the organization.
Right.
Just like frequent flyer miles.
Right.
The way I've seen these setups work before is where there's a profit side and a nonprofit side, is they're out going and getting clients, and then as the client comes in, they decide which is better for us, to put them into the nonprofit arm or to put them into the profit arm.
And that's totally fine because that's two separate transactions, and once they're in that nonprofit, they're not doing business with the profit, so that really wouldn't affect their status. It would be more like two clients came in and you decide to put them in the nonprofit, then all of a sudden you decide to throw one to the profit, then that would be a private benefit situation. Okay? Just real quick, who are considered the insiders or share, that would benefit? So you've got your board members, your officers, and your directors. Also, any key employees would be considered, but usually you don't really see too much going on with, the key employees. It's usually the higher ups that more of this private benefit would be.
So what if you have like a general employee, not a director, officer, executive, anything like that, and they pay for something on their own and get reimbursed?
Totally fine. As long as it's towards the mission of, if you go out and buy office expenses and you get reimbursed, it's totally fine. It's not, you're not benefiting from the actual organization for some other reason. People do that all the time, go out and buy lunch and then get reimbursed or anything like that. It's totally fine.
So one more clarifying question on the situation I had posed. Let's say that the person has a nonprofit that does one specific type of service or whatever for the community, but their business is some sort of complementary to that, where the people in the nonprofit, when they reach a certain point, could actually be filtered into the credit. That would be considered this, would it not?
More than likely, yes. Every situation is unique in itself, so it would just depend, but especially if the person who owns the company is a shareholder or
Like,
a
they're
board
usually
member.
the owners.
Yeah,
Okay.
it could possibly be.
I noticed that volunteers aren't on there.
Volunteers,
You know, yes, volunteer, be my volunteer, and then we'll,
well,
do something for you, yes.
I don't know necessarily. I mean, I guess it would depend on what it is. You know, I mean, you have to always think, my test is kind of, does it feel wrong? If it feels wrong, it's probably wrong. So, if you have a volunteer who owns a gas station, I don't know, whatever, and you say, if you volunteer, we'll send people over to your gas station. Is that really private endearment? You know what I mean? They're not, it would just depend. I mean, if you're just suggesting to go do something to somebody else, it's not really.
Their logo on your marketing materials. Use this gas station.
Yeah, actually
They're
advertising
volunteers.
is something actually different, which would
Okay.
follow under a different category, so yeah. It wouldn't be private endearment, it'd be something else.
But it would be about that.
Yeah.
Is it even on the shadier side to be like, we're doing a car wash outside this bar, and that you can go in and have a drink while we wash your car? Or is that they're just supporting us by giving us the water at their?
Yeah, that would be
So-
more of a supporting, I
Okay.
mean, like I said, some of it's a little gray. I mean, if they're letting you use the water and people go in and use their service, then that's not necessarily anything private.
Or like official after parties here and there, and, yeah.
Still a suggestion, not,
Yeah.
nobody has to go there, so I think, I don't see that as being an issue. I was gonna do an example, but I think just with time-wise to get through all of them, we'll just skip it. And this one's pretty easy to figure out anyway. So the next one, any other questions real quick before I move on to the next one? Okay, so lobbying, this one's pretty simple in thought. Obviously, when you and your organization contacts someone and urges them to come out and do some sort of legislative lobbying, you can't have somebody come in and, say either way on what your corporate or your nonprofit is wanting. So just, for example, say you wanted the mayor to come out, he was running again, you can't have somebody come out and urge them to go either direction on a candidate. It also kind of runs into political campaigning as well. So you are allowed some lobbying, but it depends on how substantial the lobbying is. There are nonprofits that only do lobbying, but you have to actually fill out a special form for that. So if you have an organization like that, there are other procedures you need to do to be able to do that. There are two ways to determine if you guys are doing lobbying activities. There are two tests. There's a substantial test and there is an expenditures test that can be done to determine whether your lobbying will affect your organization's tax status. So the substantial activities test, you pretty much determine how often and how much you're lobbying. And so if your organization is devoting 50% of its time to lobbying, obviously that's an issue, unless you're a lobbying organization. And if it is determined that you are providing substantial amounts of your time to lobbying, you can actually get an excise tax of up to 5% of your expenditures for the entire year. So it could be quite excessive depending on what you're doing. And then also too, they can tax on another 5%, so essentially you can be taxed up to 10% of your expenditures. So the IRS likes to get you pretty well if they find you doing things you shouldn't be doing. So the expenditures test, it's pretty much like this substantial part in the fact that it's you know, you just determine how much of your expenditures you have spent during the year, and I'm trying to explain this a little bit easier than this slide. Let's see what else we have on here. So it doesn't really totally explain that, I apologize. So in essence, there's a mathematical scale, and if you're spending expenditures over a certain percentage of your total expenditures, then you will be there's a possibility of you losing your tax exempt status. I don't think this one's too hard though to really realize. I mean, I don't know too many nonprofits that do a lot of lobbying. Is anybody aware? Have you been to any that do lobbying? Yeah.
Last week I was in DC lobbying for HRC.
Oh, okay.
So they're pretty influential with.
No, but do they do? I mean, is that their main
That's their
function?
they're a national nonprofit, big national nonprofit.
Right.
and
So
that's their main,
they'll have
that's their main mission.
yeah. So then that's totally fine.
And I'm sure they have
That
a fancy
one.
letter.
Yeah. Yeah. That 5768 election. Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Good stuff. So
Jennifer, as far as if I may, as far as a candidate's appearance, if all candidates that were running were invited, whether they attended or not, does that make any difference?
it doesn't, and that's actually going to get to the next
Oh, we're good.
slide. So we'll just
Transition
move
is
on.
everything.
Political activity. Thank you.
I
Yeah.
actually have a question on the last one.
Mhm.
It seems like there's a subtle difference between lobbying and raising awareness. Like, it seems like it should be okay to raise awareness about a particular issue, not saying believe one way or the other, but here's this issue that people should know about.
That's okay, and it's also, but it depends on how much time you're spending doing that. You know, if your mission is to promote, you know, ICANN's productive, self-confident, confident and responsible members of the community, and you're going out and saying, what's
The
a good
children,
one?
the youth of our communities are having difficult times.
Well, and that's not really lobbying. So when they think of
It's
lobbying,
raising
it's,
awareness
yeah,
of the
they're
issue.
thinking more political for lobbying. You know, for example, I have a client who's actually, they do lobbying for their nonprofit, and when it came out that you had to have identification to actually go vote, they went and lobbied against that. So that would be considered lobbying, something that has some sort of political effect or could change a law. So I would look at it that way. Raising awareness that the youth, you know, they're in bad neighborhoods, and we want to get, you know, more support for getting them to a better situation. That's not really considered lobbying.
Even if you do it to political people.
Are you looking to change a law or get a law in, or?
I'm looking for support. I'm wanting them to be aware of this issue so that if something came up where they had an opportunity to say, oh yeah, those people are solving a problem in our community, we should support them.
It's more, yeah. I think that's not really more, I wouldn't consider that lobbying per se.
Okay.
Now, if you were to say,
It's marketing.
it's more trying to promote your mission though. Like if ICANN were to go out and say, we feel like the youth aren't, you know, getting what they need, and they're just raising awareness that way, that wouldn't be considered lobbying. Okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Nonprofits aren't allowed to participate in campaigns, so it kind of goes back to the lobbying. If contributions are made to political campaign funds, public statements being made, the organization will be in violation of their nonprofit status. So they can lose their nonprofit status, and they can also be fined. So, for example, too, if an organization holds voter education courses or events that favor a particular candidate, opposes a candidate, or has any appearance of favoring any sort of candidate, they could be in violation of their status. And this goes to his question. Some activities are allowed, but there are certain rules, and it's definitely needs to be not based on favoring anybody. So,
We have two questions.
Okay.
So one, as a social media marketer, what if I was doing Twitter for a nonprofit and I retweeted something from, I don't know, Fred Duvall or, Doug Ducey? Would that be considered?
is it on for their organization or is it for, like,
So if it was like, oh, thanks, Cultural Sponge, because we're a nonprofit now. Like, thanks, Cultural Sponge, for doing this, and I retweeted it. Or if it was, I completely oppose this, and Cultural Sponge retweeted it. Is that getting super shady?
I would, well, is it part of your mission? So the real way to look at it is if you're concerned and you have no idea, if it's part of your mission, then it wouldn't be considered campaigning. If you're just randomly putting up stuff from campaigners, it could actually look like you're favoring them, so it could actually affect your status.
If it was something like, oh, Doug Ducey supports online marketing.
Then that's fine.
Okay, and how do groups, this was Heather's, how do groups such as like the Police Association of Peoria endorses this candidate? How are endorsements different than?
That's government, and so totally different rules and regulations.
Okay,
Government's kind of, they have their own set of
got it.
rules and accounting, so.
So basically, they just don't want the nonprofits involved in political activity.
Correct.
Because it's yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so for example, I put three examples up here. So if you were to have an individual activity by an organization leader, so somebody in your nonprofit, they're able to have free expression on political affairs as long as they do so as individuals and not as your actual nonprofit. And they're also able to discuss important public policy issues, but you have to make sure that they're not speaking on behalf of your organization. They're not allowed to make partisan comments at organizational events or organization publications. So that goes along with this. It needs to be completely separate. So if Aaron were to go out and make a political speech about something on his individual time and not part of ICANN, then that's totally fine. But if you were to come here and you guys had a rally or whatever, and he starts talking about how he likes Doug Ducey prior to him getting elected, that's a violation. So,
But after he's elected, it's not?
well, your organization can't necessarily, it's not really political campaigning after they've been elected.
Unless
It's
they're-
still politics, though.
Unless they're up
It
for re-election.
is, but, I mean, your best go-to is just to leave it alone. You know, you could be considered favoring somebody, and especially because they are up for re-election at some point. So, you could say, for example, if he supports after-school programs, I'm sure you can, say, we're happy that he supports, educational school programs, and we're trying to get those into our system, or, for us, ICANN or whatever. But to actually say, specific things about him and, how you like him and how you want him to get reelected and all that kind of thing is just, it's a no-no.
For or against the candidate, I would presume
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's an issue related to your mission that they support, you'd probably be all right with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Inviting a candidate to speak. So as long as it provides equal opportunity for the politicians or whoever it may be, then, and they have to be holding the same office as well. You can't have two random people just show up. So, and the event has to make sure, you have to make sure that it doesn't show support or opposition for the candidate. So if you want to have like, do you guys elect anybody other than the board? I guess board members. If you elected board members, you could have them all come speak, but you can't just have one come and do a speech. It has to be multiple. And the event doesn't show any political fundraising. So you can't be support, it shows political support if you're fundraising for anybody in particular. Going to inviting multiple candidates to speak. Some things to consider: was there an independent panel creating and preparing the questions, or was the organization doing it? Whether all topics discussed touch on a variety of issues. So if you're stuck on one issue, that's probably going to be an issue for your organization. And whether each candidate is given a fair and equal opportunity when presenting, sharing views. So if you do have multiple candidates and one gets 10 minutes and the other gets an hour, that's going to be an issue because it does show political favor. Any questions on this? I do have some case studies. Why don't we do one? Oops. And I think we have time to do one. So, well, I think they're A and B. So if you want to read case study A and B real quick, and then we'll go over the questions and get your kind of input on it.
Yeah.
What factors do you think help determine whether he violated his political intervention program?
Who's using the official newsletter?
Right. So it goes, now, if this was a newsletter that wasn't related to the organization, then it would have been fine because it would be an individual doing something outside of the nonprofit. So it's pretty, this one's, I think, pretty self-explanatory, but it's good to just have a few examples.
And regardless of him using his own funds to pay for the newsletter, it's still the voice of the organizations.
Exactly.
Doesn't make it any more legitimate.
Yeah. If it has its name associated anywhere on the publication, it's going to be a violation of your nonprofit status.
So if he uses another publication, he would not be allowed to identify as the president, right?
Well,
Could he cite president of university as a person?
if it were just saying what his job type, like what his job was, it wouldn't be a violation because that's his job. But if it was stating that he was the president and this was the view of that organization, then it would be a violation. Just having your job title behind there. Although I would say it's still, you also have to look at the appearance of things. So it probably would be better for him not to put that on there, but it's not necessarily going to violate anything.
Or to disclose maybe that he doesn't necessarily represent, the particular organization with his views.
Yeah, exactly. But in a CPA world, we always like to say even if the appearance of things could violate certain rules and standards. So if it appears kind of like you feel, it's a little bit shady, then maybe you shouldn't include it. Kind of goes to that gut feeling. All right, moving on to B. What factors help determine whether he violated his political intervention?
They didn't all speak at the same time.
Oh, what did she say?
Can you speak a little louder?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
They didn't all speak at the same time in
Okay.
the same location.
Okay.
They're all in the same office.
Okay. So that's good.
Equal opportunity.
Yep, equal opportunity.
They can speak on a variety of issues. No one was endorsed
And another one too, there was no political fundraising either, so that's always a good one to notice. Anybody else? All right.
So it doesn't matter if it's successive weeks because they all have an opportunity. They don't all have to speak on the same night.
Well, it would depend on.
If some of them spoke after the election.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, this is stating that one candidate, but it would depend on, now, if there was one candidate in the running and only one shows up, yeah, that could be a violation. This one doesn't actually state whether there's, it just says one candidate, so I'm assuming from this that there are multiple candidates, not just two.
So there's four.
So, yeah,
Oh, did I miss that? I'm sorry.
Just one candidate.
Yeah, if it's just one candidate, that's fine, because you have 3 others that are speaking, and that's okay if it's in successive weeks, as long as there are multiple people that show up. If just one shows up, then yes, it would be an issue. And the fact that that one candidate chose not to come, that's not your, you didn't interfere with not having him be there, so.
Can you have them all at one event as long as they have the same amount of timing?
Yes, you can have them all at one event. The kind of things to look for was the variety of topics, and not showing political favor to any of them, so.
But they can be talking about your subject. Say it was like a walk to end hunger and they all discuss.
That, yeah, that's fine. Any other questions?
So this one was okay.
Yeah, this one's okay.
It doesn't feel okay to me.
No? Why not?
Because you never know how many people are gonna show up on different days and different events. I mean, somebody might have 100 people and another event might have 1 person there, so.
But that's not to do with the whole having candidates come. So the amount of participation isn't a factor in whether, the amount of participation from other people is not a factor in whether your status is affected. It's to do with the people actually, your candidates or your public campaigners coming. Is what is the determining factor. So if you had 3 candidates come one week and only 1 person showed up, and the next week 100 people showed up, the same 3 candidates, and you didn't show any political favor, they had the same amount of time, there was no political fundraising, doesn't affect your nonprofit status. So, unfortunately with events, you never know how many people are gonna show up, so if you're putting it on and you're impartial and fair, then it's totally fine. Okay? You still look like.
No, I hear what you're saying. I'm just thinking you could, like, okay, this candidate is, his speech is on, it's the holiday that's coming up, St. Patrick's Day, right?
Well, you have to have a variety of topics. So that if one person's speaking about not related to your mission, if they're only speaking about one thing, that could be a violation. So you have to have a variety of topics. It can't just be St. Patrick's.
And you can't limit them on what they want to talk about either.
No.
Because here they're not limiting. They could talk about ice cream cones and Santa Claus and the reindeer if they wanted to.
If they really wanted to, yeah.
I don't know,
I mean-
Santa could even be controversial.
Nowadays.
That's
But yeah, I mean,
true,
if
but I'm
you
just saying it's their choice.
Yeah, and one thing here too is that when the president introduces him, he doesn't show any preference or mention their qualifications. So it's more of just an impartial kind of whatever it may be, debate or whatever. So another thing about having multiple people come is if you had an outside panel do questions, and then they all answered those questions, that's another factor in helping to alleviate that political campaigning issue. Okay? All right. So the next one is one of my more favorite ones because, well, not favorite, I guess, but this is more of an issue with nonprofits not realizing that this is actually an issue. So unrelated business income. What does that really mean? So what it really means is anything that has to do with your mission is not considered unrelated business income. But if it isn't related to your mission, then it's considered unrelated business income. So for example, if your mission is to give out ice cream cones and you start selling hot dogs, those hot dogs would be unrelated business income. That's a really simple kind of.
Unless you change your mission.
Unless you change your mission, yes. And too much income generated from these activities will affect your status. So any income that is regularly carried on that doesn't meet your mission is considered unrelated business income. And there are 3 conditions that must be met before the income is potentially taxable. So the activity must be a trade or business, which is pretty much everything, right? So that one's pretty much gonna hit your unrelated business tax income. The trade or business must be regularly carried on. And so there is a stipulation on this. Regularly carried on could be seasonal. That could be considered regularly carried on. And the business activity is not substantially related to your organization's purpose or mission. So we're gonna have some participation so that we can kind of understand this concept. So I'm gonna have each person come up and read one of these lovely papers to pick from, and you have to decide whether it is related business income or unrelated business income. So I'm gonna put Danielle on the hot spot. You are first.
Yeah, making you.
I can pick anyone?
You can pick anyone you want. Hopefully an easy one, right?
Hopefully. Okay. A halfway house organized to provide room, board, therapy, and counseling for persons discharged from alcoholic treatment centers also operates a furniture shop to provide full-time employment for its residents. The profits are applied to the operating costs of the halfway house.
What do you think? Related or unrelated?
Depends on the
Unrelated.
Huh? Are you guys just answering?
It's unrelated.
What do you think?
I would say unrelated.
And actually, this one is related business income. And the reason it's related is because the people that they're providing housing for are making the furniture, and then the money is going towards their actual organization. So they consider that related business income.
So what if they weren't making the furniture, but they were just working there? What would that? Because this just says operate, so it depends on how you look at it.
There's always an if.
Yes.
So you're saying,
Like you're saying that they make the furniture. This one just says that they're just working in the furniture store.
oh, okay. That's still,
Still be related?
yeah, because it's employment for its residents,
Okay.
that's the
And
reason
then that money
it's
goes back
back to the organization. Now, if you had people coming in there that weren't residents, then that would be unrelated business income. There's another stipulation too, where if volunteers are providing these activities, then it's unrelated business income. I'll give you an example. A lot of churches have a program that they call Script. And what it is they go buy gift cards from Fry's, wherever, at a donated rate. And then they sell them to their members. And so all of that technically is considered, all the profits from that would technically be considered unrelated business income if the selling of the script isn't done by a volunteer. If it's done by a volunteer, then it's considered unrelated business income. So it's a little bit tricky. The rules are always a little tricky. So there are some churches that do not have a volunteer providing these services, and they must file a 990T, I think it's a 990T, to indicate that they should be paying tax on that money. So that sometimes is a little tricky, but volunteers, usually it's considered unrelated if that person is a volunteer doing it.
Oh, you mean it's related with the volunteer?
Sorry, yes, related. Thank you. All right, who wants to go next? Hillary? Hopefully you have enough time. The other ones are pretty simple, the last two.
All right, a museum has a theater auditorium designed for showing educational films in connection with its program of public education in the arts and sciences. The theater is a principal feature of the museum and operates continuously while the museum is open to the public. If the organization also operates the theater, if the organization also operates the theater as a motion picture theater for the public, the museum is closed. That's unrelated business income.
Yes. Did everyone hear that? So the theater was operating after business hours, so that would be considered unrelated business income. And I meant to have tape so you could tape them up, but it's okay. Yeah, if you would like. It's more fun. Put a little tape on the wall, throw it up there. Jennifer? Yay. Some of these are a little
purpose is to retain and stimulate trade in a downtown area, has inadequate parking facilities, operates a fringe parking lot and shuttle bus service. It also operates as an insubstantial part of its activities, a park and shop plan. The fringe parking lot and shuttle bus service operate in a manner that does not favor any individual or group of the downtown merchants. The merchants cannot offer free or discount parking or bus fares to their customers. The park and shop plan encourages customers to use a limited number of participating member merchants in order to obtain free parking.
That's a long, confusing one, isn't it?
Yes.
So needless to say, the merchant has a parking lot
Right, and then they have a shuttle bus service.
and it operates a fringe parking lot and shuttle bus service.
Parking shop, and it has a parking shop plan, so they're selling plans to use their shuttle service.
Right, now, the real part of it is, it's an insubstantial part of activities, but the merchants cannot offer free or discounted parking.
Well, who benefits from the parking or the shuttle services provided? Is there a fee for that? I can't tell with that.
It says that parking shop plan encourages customers to use a limited number of participating member merchants in order to obtain free parking.
Park somewhere.
So in other
Hopefully shop
words,
at the
if you
shops.
want free, yes, you buy our plan, you get to go to these. We recommend you going to.
So it's a
Esplanade.
business league is offering this, parking shuttle, so
This should be not a nonprofit to begin with, because this is a business model. This
probably, yes.
This shouldn't really even be a nonprofit technically.
Technically, no, but this is,
But they
it
are,
has
you
its-
have nonprofits like this. because
Yes.
People don't want to pay taxes.
Right, so technically
Well,
this is.
I mean, let's face reality. Everybody wants to start a nonprofit, and I ask them, why do you want to start a nonprofit? I want free money and I don't want to pay taxes. That's not why you start a nonprofit. But that is people's reasoning, so that's what this is.
So yes, so in essence, this one's unrelated business income. So sorry for that long confusing one, but if you want to stick it up there to unrelated business income, would you like to be next? Hopefully we pull a shorter one, right? Sorry. Some of these are government written, so I apologize. I should have known better. Okay.
An association of credit unions with tax-exempt status as a business league publishes a consumer-oriented magazine 4 times a year and makes it available to member credit unions for purchase. By selling a magazine to its members as a promotional device, the organization furnishes its members with a regular commercial service that they can use in their own operations. Doesn't seem right to me.
What is the commercial service? I mean, I don't know.
Well, the fact that it's a commercial service really isn't to do with their mission, so she's right, it's unrelated business income. Because the publication doesn't necessarily provide assistance with their mission. And
There's
there's,
another one that shouldn't be a nonprofit.
well, credit union, there are nonprofit
Wait, I'm
credit
just
unions.
saying, the magazine part is a for-profit model that needs to really.
Brenda? Oh, we're getting short on time. That's okay.
I had so much fun.
I know, this is the fun participation card.
A short one. An exempt organization organized and operated for the prevention of cruelty to animals, this is good, receives money for pet boarding.
Pet boarding.
They receive money for pet boarding, and they're an exempt.
That's related.
Where did they receive the money from? Does it matter?
It's business
Well,
income.
it's,
It's business income side, but they could still have their nonprofit portion for, but for their actual receiving money for pet boarding, I would say that's, if it's not 80% of their monies, if it's like 10% of their money, they're still doing their mission.
well, technically, pet boarding is separate from the cruelty to animals. you have to think of like I know it's kind of a tricky one.
But it doesn't say their mission, so if their mission is to rescue animals, they should have boarding on premises, which
That-
means if they had vacant boarding, they could rent that out probably.
Yes, so then that would make that related business income. This one's a little
But
big.
this would, yeah.
So that one technically was supposed to be unrelated business income, but you're right, it's a little vague. So if their main mission is just cruelty, protecting animals from cruelty, pet boarding is a separate aside kind of business, so it would be unrelated.
But I would think rescue is a part of protecting, right?
Well, rescue, if it was I mean,
The
that's
rescue
just
is a
category too.
Well, and then if you get a substantial amount of money, couldn't you say rescue and housing?
You'd have to change your mission.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
How hard is that?
Feels like a short one.
That's what I was thinking.
An organization whose exempt purpose is to stimulate and foster public interest in the fine arts by promoting art exhibits, sponsoring cultural events, and furnishing information about fine arts. Leases studio apartments to artist tenants and operates a dining hall primarily for his tenants.
That's me.
Sounds like a UBI to me.
That is to art students, that's not part of their mission. Nikki?
Oh, man.
You could probably look to see if he's there.
Check to see if
A tax-exempt hospital whose primary activity is rehabilitation sells hearing aids to patients. This activity is an essential part of the hospital's program to test and evaluate patients. So, I mean, if it's an essential part of the hospital's program, I would say it's related.
Yep, it's related income. Yep, exactly right. Who would like to go next?
I will.
And I will promise to go quickly on the last ones for you, because I know everybody has to be somewhere.
An agricultural organization whose exempt purpose are to promote better conditions for cattle breeders and to improve the breed generally, regularly sells cattle for its members on a commission basis. Sounds shady.
Unrelated business. Yep, that's correct. I was just thinking, if you're promoting,
I think
Not
it's
cruelty.
interesting what you're putting up there is unrelated, like the renting of the space for the museum, the theater.
it's
I
after
mean,
hours.
After hours, but they still do that after hours. And they'll say because they own the building, it's okay.
Well, if they were to have a tax person come in, the IRS, they probably would not.
But I'm
look
just
at it.
saying, because
Oh,
I
yeah.
know the museums here in town do that.
An exempt scientific organization enjoys an excellent reputation in the field of biological research. It exploits this reputation by by selling endorsements of laboratory equipment to manufacturers. It has a word, exploits in it. So it's
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
And it's funny because there were about the same amount of related as unrelated,
Oh,
so you
okay,
guys
unrelated.
picked a lot of the unrelated. How ironic, right? So it's just something to be aware of. Another one that real quickly is advertising income. If you have a publication and you're selling advertising space, that is unrelated business income, and it could get you into a lot of trouble. So just be aware of that. That's another thing that organizations don't think
So
of.
if a nonprofit has a program for an event and they sell advertising space in that program,
Technically could be, yes.
Wow.
But
Just
they don't-
depends.
I
It
mean-
depends. If they're sponsoring,
Yeah, if you change it to sponsorships that
Then
are being
it's okay.
posted
Oh, yeah,
in
it's
there,
part of
then
the
you're okay.
if it's part of a sponsorship, then it's not considered. But if it's not part of the word, it's the one thing is you just have to be very careful with wording.
But when you say sponsorship, you can't say, will you sponsor a quarter page?
usually the nonprofits.
You know what
Now,
I'm saying?
you say, well,
I
if
mean,
you-
if you're talking
Give
package,
their logo on
you
this,
get,
this, and this, and
you
then
can't just give that
full
ad.
page ad.
No, like usually sponsorship, say for a gold tier membership, it includes this. But
Right.
you have to sponsor, this is how much the sponsorship is.
I'm wondering what the, I'm wondering what, I know some, I'm gonna ask them.
Just real quick, we'll try to get through this really
Yeah.
quick. Annual reporting obligations is another one. You'll see the handout that I gave you. There are 3 forms that you can file, the 990, the 990EZ, and the 990N. In 2006, the IRS passed the Pension Act of 2006, and it required any entity 25,000 of income or less to file this 990N. Unfortunately, where they put it, it didn't really get out to the public. So if you read this nice little letter or handout that I gave you, about 275,000 of them became in violation of their filing requirements. They did, of course, come back and say there's an extension on it because there's a little bit of a public outcry relating to that. So it's an interesting article. It's a little older, but usually these things occur when the IRS passes new things and nobody knows about them. So, and real quick, Form 990 is if your gross receipts are more than 200K or you have assets of more than 500,000 at the end of the year. The 990EZ is less than 200,000 in income or your total assets at the end of the year are 500K. And they did raise the 990N, which is, they call it an e-postcard, you can file it online, to 50K or less. In 2006 it was 25, so they're making it a little bit easier for filing, but essentially you pretty much have to file something now if you have a nonprofit. Operating in a corporate or stated exempt purpose. We've already gone over this kind of, which was nice. If you are not conducting business with what you filed when you filed for your non-exempt status, then you're going to be in violation of your status. So if you stop doing all or any significant amount of what you said you were going to do, you're going to be in violation of your non-exempt status. And if your organization's direction has changed, let the IRS know. It's the only way to really solve that issue. So you'll have to refile or amend your filing. So in conclusion, the six are going to be private benefits, lobbying, political activity, unrelated business income, which I think is the trickiest one, and annual reporting, and lastly, operation in accord with stated exempt purposes. And if you adhere to all 6 of these, you should be okay with your tax status.
How do you change your stated exempt purposes? I mean,
You would file an amended filing.
Is our purpose as a nonprofit, we have our own bylaws, right? I assume
That is totally fine.
that state that.
Mm-hmm.
But, so we can change that anytime
The bylaws are
director
fine,
says we can.
but it still has to go with your mission, your stated mission, what you filed for in your mission.
And so we file that mission with the U.S. government.
Yes.
Okay.
It's in that.
Sorry that I took you guys over a little bit. If you have any other questions or if you want a copy of the slides, I'm happy to provide that electronically. I just didn't want to print them out. You probably are going to throw them out anyway, so save a few trees. And if you have any questions, you have my business card, so feel free to email me. I will respond probably within the day, depending on what client I'm at. But I will get back to you within 24 hours.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So.
Appreciate it.
Guys, I hope it was at least entertaining.
Oh, yeah, okay, great.
Rushing through.
Okay, did everyone get the sign-in sheet? I want to make sure everyone signed in. Yeah? Okay. If you have a business card, you can leave it in the 3-ring binder like Brenda stated earlier, and any materials that you wanted to put out for future meetings. Make sure to leave your name tag, so we have it here for you should you come to another presentation.
When you come to another.
That's it. If anyone's interested in a tour, Brenda can do that.
Real quick too, I'm sorry, if you want to know more about unrelated business tax income, because I think this is the trickiest one, there is a publication, 598, that's out on the web. It's actually pretty easy to read, surprisingly. So if you ever have any questions, you can Google this. So, and if you forget the number, because I would never remember, please just email me, and I can let you know what that form is. Thank you guys very much. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure.